Welcome to Whachacha's Tabletop World, a channel devoted to the love of board gaming. My name is Sweetness Whachacha, and today we're looking at something fun to do with Pandemic called the Pandemic World Tour. Now, a little preamble to this. I love to get more out of things. You know, I like to watch Aliens and then play an Aliens board game, or, play Coimbra and then plan a trip to Coimbra, or go to Coimbra and play it and remind myself of the fun we had there or whatever. So those are the sorts of things I like to do. And this lives in that same kind of world. Now, I recently reviewed Dwarf Romantic as well as Cascadia, and they both kind of do a little similar thing. Cascadia has this little achievement thing in its booklet, and you can just add those to your game. The game itself doesn't change. You still enjoy it in the same way that you would. However, now you get that added benefit and bonus of like, hey, you're keeping track. Everybody's keeping track of their progress. Dwarf Romantic, that one does change because you unlock different tiles and things, but essentially you're still playing the same game, but you're able to enjoy it in this other way with the achievement list and things like that. So it's just getting a little bit more out of the game. Now you can do similar things out of different games, and I may talk about these at some point in more depth, but for instance, Formula Day, or Formula D, whichever, version you're playing, is a race car game, and it has a lot of different maps, and so you could kind of do like a season of race car races, keep track of those racers and how well they do, have everybody assigned to a different car or whatever. I don't know how real racing works, but I'm guessing it's something similar. And then like Concordia is another great example. It's a game that has a lot of maps, so you can kind of play through all those and kind of keep track in a way. So, you can do something similar with those because they have a lot of stuff to those games. So what exactly is the Pandemic World Tour, which is what this video is about? Well, it's something my friend Jesse and I did from Co-op for Two. We did this together, and essentially, we took the game of Pandemic, we took all its variations. It has a lot of, different kinds of games out, and it has different scenarios, and some of the expansions have modular things that can be combined with all the other things. And all it was is basically to make a long list of every possible way that you could play Pandemic, and then going through and playing it. And the idea being that you would want to win a game before, or that version of the Pandemic game you're playing, before moving on to the next scenario or different game or whatever. Now, you can see the sheet that Jesse made up on the screen here. It's two-sided. You can find it on Board Game Geek. It was nice of him to make that. Now it's been a few years, and so there's other games that would have to be added, so the challenge would change. But essentially, it is as I'm going to talk about it now. Now, why does it work for Pandemic itself? Why is that game approachable for this? Well, for a number of reasons. Number one, Pandemic is a phenomenally designed game, very elegantly designed game. It has a lot of variations, as I've mentioned, and it has a lot of like modular variations. So you could play, one standalone game, but you can add a couple different modules to that, and you can get a lot of mileage out of that. Also, the game is not a long game. It generally comes in around an hour. So if you fail a game, replaying it isn't as big of a commitment. Easier to set up, not a super heavy game. So it kind of has all of the hallmarks that you would want to be able to do this. Fairly quick to play, a lot of variation, a lot of stuff available for it. It's a great game, and it's not too intense. So it really is perfect for this kind of a challenge. So as I say, part of the appeal to this is like a living card game or a campaign game where you're sort of dungeon diving or delving and doing that kind of a style of game, is that you're not relearning the whole game. You have a basis of understanding, and you're not also playing the same game over and over again because you're being challenged in different ways in the different scenarios. You're having to not change the kind of game you're playing, but the strategy you're taking to play that specific game in each of its iterations. And there's not really, honestly, a whole lot more to it, this idea, but I do want to kind of talk a little bit about, the different challenges and things in the games itself. There's a legendary difficulty, which I kind of thought was going to be much harder than it was, but we kind of made a little thing where we picked our own characters. We generally will deal each other a few characters and pick from there rather than randomly assign them. I just find that to be a little more enjoyable. So we kind of handpicked our team for that, which is kind of cool. It's like when in the heist movies, we're going to need a driver, we're going to need somebody that could heal things, So it was kind of fun to do that, and we actually knocked that out pretty easily. The worldwide panic scenario was by far the most difficult one that we had to deal with. The super bug was quite difficult when you added that to other scenarios. It seemed to be pretty difficult. And the Roma scenario, which is for the fall of Rome, it's one of the scenarios in there. that one gave us a little trouble. We had to do that a number of times to beat it. I don't know, that was a little trickier to do. We also had a bunch of the Rising Tide scenarios, but that map is very difficult, and so we didn't go through. There was a lot more we could have done with that one, but we just figured, play a couple of games of that, and that was enough. I mean, we'd played it before, but we did want to do it for this challenge. And that's the other nice thing, is that you get to replay. It's an excuse to go back and replay some stuff that you've already played and enjoyed in the past. We also, we only took like 2 or 3 diseases for the Iberia version. They have the way you can do cholera or malaria or the yellow fever, and I can't remember the last disease in there, but in the past, I've tried to do all 4, and that's insanely hard. So we only did like 2 or 3, which provides a really good challenge. But it was, we got enough out of that game itself. So it was really fun to revisit those and have those new challenges as seasoned players, to Pandemic. I'll also say this is it was nice to play through this with my friend Jesse from Co-op for Two. We did this. It was one of my cherished memories. I really enjoyed doing this with him, and it was a very fun thing to do. I think if you have a friend or a gaming partner, if you're lucky enough to have one in your life, it's kind of a nice thing to do, to do something like this together. Getting more people together, obviously it's like that D&D scheduling thing, it becomes much more difficult. So it's kind of like, I think of it a bit like Einstein's clothes, that whole thing where like Einstein had like the same clothes, so he didn't have to spend time and energy and thought thinking about what to wear the next day. He just wore the same thing. And it's kind of like that in a little bit way, where it's like, you don't have to be like that whole like, what are we going to play today? No, you're on this little quest, and you say, okay, we're going to play the next one of these. And that's kind of a nice thing to do. It also gives you a sense of accomplishment. I happen to love disposable games. People a lot of times are like, you can't only play that once and then that's done, like legacy games and so forth. People get really cranky about that, even though most people aren't going to play that game more than the amount of times it would take to play that box anyway. But to me, it's like finishing a good book. It's like I feel that sense of accomplishment. Set it on the shelf, done. I enjoyed that. That was an experience I enjoyed. And so this is kind of a nice thing like that. And then you get to go on to the next adventure. And speaking of which, I got to roll.